Okay, it's 10:02. I call to order this meeting of the Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water Conservation District. I'm going to do a roll call and let me see. Sorry a minute here. I'm getting up to speed with all my devices and everything here. Okay, I have my list from Ann's email here. Okay, myself, Tom Prattley, here. Joe Thompson,
Here.
John Easter,
Here.
Stephen Meeks,
Here.
Steve Lucas.
Here.
I think Mark Campbell will be joining us later, I believe, from what he said in an email. Mark, are you here? Okay. Angus Murdoch. Lonnie Murray. Lonnie, are you with us? I thought I saw you on the participant.
Yeah, I'm here.
I see
Okay.
a picture.
Okay, thank you. David Collins.
Here.
Okay, I'll call Carrie Swanson. I know she said she's not unable to be here this morning. Julie Jones.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And associate directors, Navar Bartz.
I'm here.
Okay, Logan Twerdy. Grosvenor Merle Smith.
I am here.
Carolyn Daughters.
Here.
Kim Tingley sent an email and said he could not be here this morning. Kelsey Calger. Okay. And if you could help me out with staff, who is supposed to be on the meeting portion this morning?
Steve, Lisa Hyatt has joined us. Tim Talley has joined us. Lauriston is with us, and Chris is in a separate meeting. Luke will be joining us soon, and then I have asked staff to join us at 11:30 if they were available to listen to our guest speaker. And Chris is unfortunately has a conflicting meeting today, so he won't be joining us. But it looks like right now Lisa, Tim, Lauriston, and Amy, of course, and myself are already on the call.
Okay.
And then I did hear from Robert Shoemaker. He will be joining in around 11 o'clock or a little after. And we did have a time certain for him at 11:30. So he's not with us now, but he will be joining us soon.
Okay. Okay. And moving on to partners, Debbie Cross with DCR. You here, Debbie? Corey Kirkland, NRCS. Dana Bayless, NRCS. Patricia Perez, FSA. Okay, well, hopefully we'll have partners joining us at the time for partner reports. Anyone else today we need to, any other partner agency, anyone from any partner agencies or anyone, just as we take the roll this morning? Okay. Let's move on to the motion to conduct an electronic meeting. Would someone make that the motion? It's on the screen, the agenda.
It's kind of become my custom to do this. This is Steve Lucas. I'll go ahead and read it. I move that the Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Directors certify that the nature of the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, as declared by the Governor of Virginia, makes it impractical or unsafe for the board to assemble in a single physical location, and further that the purpose of the meeting, including all agenda items as reflected in the meeting's prepared agenda, is to transact or discuss business that is statutorily required or that is necessary to continue operations of the board and the discharge of the board's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. I make that motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. The motion to conduct an electronic meeting. And Amy, would you please call the roll call vote of directors?
Mr. Col- Mr.
Martin?
Easter,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. We can now
Pardon
proceed
me?
with our,
I'm sorry, Tom,
yes,
was I called? I didn't hear my name. David Collins.
Called your name first.
I'm sorry, Amy, I missed it. Pardon me. And I'll say aye.
Thank you.
okay. Thanks, David, and thanks, Steve, for making the motion as you often do.
I've about
can
got
now-
it memorized.
Okay. Okay, we can now move on to the meeting. Guest introductions later on in the meeting, as Ann said, Robert Shoemaker from DCR will be in to be a guest speaker at 11:30. I don't believe we have any other guest unless someone would like to introduce themselves. Okay.
Has Mr. Murdoch just joined us?
I just joined the Will. I'm under Will's alias here.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Angus. Announcements. I think Ann has already made the announcement. We have a guest speaker at 11:30, and that is time certain. We will be having him come on at 11:30. So we'll probably be trying to move the business along at a good clip so we can arrive at 11:30 with our having completed our business for the month. Public comment. Amy, is there anyone submitted comments from the public or anyone to comment?
No comments have been received.
Okay, thank you. Could you move the page up just slightly, Amy, so I can pull it up on my phone here, but there we go. A little more. I wanted to see what on the action items. In additions to changes to the agenda, we'll be adding action item number 7, which will be a request for an extension to submitting our strategic plan to DCR. That will be action item number 7. Are there any other additions or changes to the agenda that anyone wants to bring forward? Okay. Okay, moving on to action item number 1, the director's meeting minutes from October 28th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review them? Are there any additions, changes, corrections? If not, would accept a motion to approve the minutes.
So
I'll
moved.
make the motion.
Okay, is there a second? I believe
second.
Joe. Okay. Okay, moved and seconded to adopt the October 28th meeting minutes. Amy, would you please call roll?
Mr. Collins,
I should defer but or abstain. I was not here last time.
Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. Moving on to the Agriculture Committee report. Joe?
Yes, Tom. Our first item is a transfer of maintenance responsibility agreement for a BMP from John Paulson to Jared Hardwood on contract number 02-15-0258. What this is, for those of you who are kind of new to the BMP program activities, is when there's an existing practice that a landowner has participated with us to put in, there's a period that practice has to be maintained, and it varies depending on the practice. It has to be maintained as functional. So an example would be if we paid to build an exclusion fence and a tree comes down on that fence, it's the responsibility of the landowner to remove the tree, repair the fence so the fence still serves its purpose. When a property changes hands for whatever reason, and there's a practice that still within what we call its life, then the new owner has to agree to accept responsibility for maintaining it. So that's what this is, and the Ag Committee is recommending to the board to approve this transfer of maintenance responsibility. So we need a motion.
Also move, Stephen.
I'll second. Angus?
Okay, Amy, if you could call the roll call vote on that, please.
Mr. Collins, Mr.
Aye.
Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye. Looks like the ayes have it. The next item we have is an RCPP grant application with DCR. A lot of letters there. But what this is, and I'm going to have Ann talk about this in a little more detail, as she's going to be the author of this grant application, working with Luke, is a joint effort between us and the Natural Resources Conservation Service to implement a new or an innovative practice. And Ann, do you want to talk about this for us? Give us a little more detail.
Sure. Just thanks, Joe. It's the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. It's a federal grant program. DCR is actually going to be the lead applicant, and we are a partner with DCR in the application, but they'll be submitting it. We did apply for this grant about a year ago, and we considered applying for it last spring. The first application back in November, there was a couple of technicalities on why we didn't get it. And then in addition, they wanted us to increase the request for funding for our staff to assist more with the NRCS workload. And so we have revised the grant application to include more TA. So we'll have more technical assistance funding for our staff. And then a couple of program changes, which is why I think Tom and I wanted to bring this forward to you all to review it again, and we would like board approval. The original application was going to be focusing on what DCR calls the whole farm approach, and that's a specific bundle of agronomic practices, the whole farm terminology is not to be confused with other types of whole farm conservation work that we do, but this specific bundle was for agronomic practices. Tim and Luke have been working really hard to come up with acreages and what we think we could do in that bundle, and they're going to have some numbers for us hopefully this afternoon or before the end of the week. But DCR has agreed to allow us to include creating a bundle for grazing practices, as well as a work with DCR on their healthy soils bundle, which has not been developed yet, but we hope will be developed in the next couple of years. This is going to be a 5-year grant application. It probably won't start until next summer. So I think we've got time to work out the details on what a grazing bundle will look like. And certainly we'll have time to hear more what DCR comes up with on their healthy soils bundle. So I'm excited about it. I think it's a great opportunity for us. Tim has a lot of experience with the growers in Louisa County, which is where our primary agronomic practices will occur. And if you have any questions for him, we certainly could go there. But right now we'll be submitting their final information to DCR. I'll be working with their grant manager between now and next Monday. And the application's due November 30th. But with the holidays, we're shooting for next week. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm not sure if Luke has joined us. So if you have any questions for Luke or Tim, they're here as well. And thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Any questions for Ann or Luke?
David Collins here. Is that part of what this Healthy Soils program is about?
It's not specifically. This is a federal regional partnership grant. It just so happens that timing wise, we think that if we include healthy soils in this proposal, that that logistically things will work out that we can include healthy soils in this funding pool. But the funding is really just a nationwide grant application to implement more conservation.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, I guess, that the DCR is the applicant on this. I mean, we have it as RCPP grant application with DCR. We're a partner on it. We're not actually the entity submitting the application.
But to clarify, if I heard Ann right, I think we are the authors of it, though, working with DCR. Is that correct?
DCR does the uploading and Daryl and I work out the narrative together.
Okay, thanks.
But
Other
ultimately, our folks, our NRCS folks and our technical folks will be doing the work. DCR is there kind of overseeing things, but
Correct.
the DCR itself doesn't put conservation on the ground.
No, but I will say that DCR is providing 25% match. So they will have a significant stake in this, but our staff will be doing the work with NRCS staff.
Any other questions? My understanding of this program is that it's to look for ways to amplify the efforts of individual entities like districts, NRCS, DCR, by working more together and having a central coordinated project. Is that kind of a good explanation of it, Ann?
I think so, yes. Many of the funding sources that come from the federal government, they're looking for partnerships to work with their NRCS team. And so I do believe this will be a great way for us to do that. There's also an element of innovation which is required. And the bundling aspect of it, I believe, is what NRCS and DCR believe is the innovation piece for this. It's a little bit different than how we've traditionally operated. And so the idea is that the innovation part is that we work with the whole farm to try to get more implementation done per track.
Great, thanks. Other questions?
And this is Luke. It also gives us a specific funding source from the federal government, specifically for TGS WCD, as opposed to EQIP, which is competing against practices statewide. So it's good for the district overall. It gives us more option funding long term.
Good point. So there isn't the competition for a central pot of funds. Luke, if there aren't any other questions, Luke, do you have anything as far as updates from the ag team? What you guys are concentrating on real quick?
Yeah, I can give a quick update on that. It's we've been lucky. We've had a couple holidays, so we've been working around that, but that's just a nice time of year for us. But we are gearing up to do a big push in the first 2 weeks of December. We're getting all our ducks in a row to do all the cover crop inspections, and we're still working out the final numbers, but we'll be checking over 6,000 acres of cover crop in early December. We try to do those all in 1 week, just so we're treating everyone the same as far as the percent cover requirements, because a lot can change if you wait 2 to 3 weeks between inspections. So it'll be a big week for us. We're also going to try to squeeze in 20 spot checks for practices that are coming up on their end of the 10-year lifespan. We have 20 structural practices that will be inspecting. We have to inspect them by 12/31/2020. We're just for efficiency while we're out in the field doing all these inspections for cover crop. We're trying to add the spot check on top of that. We're also working on end of year stuff, tax credits, making sure we have all our ducks in a row to make sure the tax credit certificates go out on time and accurately in January. We're gearing up for a pretty big approval meeting in early December as well for the Ag Committee. We got a couple projects in the hopper and a few that we need to discuss that we're hoping to have early December, but I'll follow up with everyone on that. Other than that, it's, getting projects on the ground and continue our normal day-to-day work, but we're all very busy and got a lot on our plate, but we got a good team, so we can knock it out.
Thanks, Luke. And there are, which we'll address later, on the ratification agenda, you can see the number of practices that I use delegated authority to approve in the interim. Because there are so few, those weren't taken to a full committee meeting. If there's no more questions, that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Joe. I'd like to have an action on the RCPP just because we've kind of approved that in the past, but just so that we have in the minutes a board action approving our commitment to this partnership as it's proposed right now.
And how would you like that structured?
Just kind of like what I said, a motion to approve our commitment to that RCPP partnership and application submitted by DCR, and as it is now proposed. I guess what I'm saying is that previously we have approved going ahead with kind of a different version of it, and it's been expanded a little bit, and we should probably have that in the minutes that there was a board action to approve that.
So move.
I'll second.
David Collins.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, Amy, would you call the roll call vote on that, please?
Mr. Campbell,
I'm going to abstain since I came in at the end of the conversation.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Prattley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Joe, do you see a need to adopt? I know we generally do it. Adopt the Agriculture Committee report, or do we basically?
I think we have it in the, well, actually, the consent agenda is committee minutes. So I don't know protocol wise if we have to do that or not, Tom.
Okay, we generally do it. Let's have a motion to approve the Agriculture Committee report.
I move to accept it. I move that we accept the Agriculture Committee report.
I'll second David Collins.
Okay, moved and seconded to accept the Agriculture Committee report. If there's no discussion, question, Amy, would you call the roll call vote on that, please?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Prattley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to number 3, the Water Resources Committee report. Lonnie?
Yes, if you look, you'll see in the ratification agenda, you'll see it was approved in there. We didn't have a meeting for the Water Resources Committee, so I don't have anything to report, but I would like to ask staff if they had any updates they'd like to share.
This is Lisa. I don't have anything besides my one project that's already on the ratification agenda. Thank you.
Okay.
This is Ann. Chris is right now currently in the RSEP meeting. It will be a series of educational outreach materials going out about leaf litter, I think oil down the drain, those sorts of things. And so just keep your eye out for that Love Your Watershed campaign logo that we're all using together. And for those who don't know, the RSEP is the Rivanna Stewardship Education Partnership, and that's a group of community members in our area that work together on watershed issues, and we do a series of educational pieces. So those will be coming out soon, and they're meeting on that today.
Yeah, and there is also a TMDL meeting for the Rivanna tonight, right? Isn't it?
Yes, that's tonight, and hopefully you'll be there, Lonnie.
Yeah, I just sent in my confirmation. I might be arriving late because I have another committee meeting, but I'll try to get there as soon as I can. Well, that's all I have for now. I did reach out to Chris about scheduling a Water Resources Committee meeting. But that's all I have for now.
Okay, thanks, Lonnie. We'll move to accept the Water Resources Committee report, please.
So move.
Second, Steve Lucas.
Okay, moved and seconded to accept the Water Resources Committee report. If there's no discussion, Amy, would you please call roll?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. Moving on to the next action item, Budget Finance Committee report. Stephen Meeks.
Thanks, Tom. The committee did not meet. However, attached to your agenda materials are the financial statements for this past month that Amy prepared. So you have hopefully you all had a chance to review it. I did not see anything amiss. If Amy has any comments she wants to make, I'd ask her to please do that. Otherwise, I think we just need a motion to receive the financial statements for this month.
I've got one question. Is the budget column, is that annual budget or is that the prorated July through October budget?
That is the full fiscal year annual budget.
Okay.
So the little table down at the bottom of that page shows the comparison of actual versus budget year to date. So at 33% of the fiscal year, operating revenues were at 26.6% of budget. Operating expenditures were at 30.7% of budget, and use of carryover funding was at 28.2% of the amount budgeted for the fiscal year.
Thanks.
Okay, Stephen. Is that the extent? I guess we'll be looking for a motion to adopt the treasurer's report and financial statements for October.
Move for the adoption.
Okay. Moved and seconded to adopt the treasurer's report and financial statements for October. Amy, would you please call roll?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. Moving on to action item number 5, the Dam Committee report. Steve Lucas.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We met in a Zoom meeting to discuss the 2 bids we received on installing the monitors on the high hazard dams on Route 15. And it was the consensus of the committee to award the bid to Wise and Sons. They were low bidder. And they also did the Culpeper work for the Culpeper Saltwater Conservation District on their dams. So they got a good review. Tim checked with the Culpeper folks and they did a good job. They have the experience, know what to do. So it was a kind of a good idea. We figured just to go ahead and approve Wise. So first need them, and we determined at the last meeting, since we met early enough this year, to have the board actually vote on the approval. So I'd first like to make the motion coming from a committee that that Wise and Sons be granted the contract to install the monitors on the dams.
Is there a second?
This is Julie.
I'll second that. Julie.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Steve's motion to approve the contract for the remote monitoring on the dams. Amy, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, the other issue is the rain gauges that will be installed on the same posts as the monitors, and that gives us a little bit more information to be able to look at the dams, how much rain we get, how the dams respond. It makes sense to put them on at the same time the monitors are being installed, and it's an expense of about $1,600, and would like to make the motion that the district purchase these monitors to go on these high hazard dams.
I move that we accept that. David Collins.
Second by Mark.
Hey,
Okay.
Steve, question, Steve, is that cost in line with what we originally anticipated?
I think so, Steve. It's $400 each, and like I see on the agenda plus the shipping, it's about what we'd been quoted earlier on.
Okay.
Steve, how does that slot in with the they know that we were possibly going to go with that you just add that on as another expense, or was that already figured in, or how was that done?
Well, that's something that Tim's out there too, but yeah, at the same time, the other monitors are going in. These just attach to the mast that's right there. It's as far as the contractor goes, it's really no more work. It's just a matter of running the cable from the rain gauge to the monitor. It's a little plug in. It's if they're not there at the same time, then our staff, we can put it on there, but it'd be just easy as if we have them when Wise gets started, we'll attach them at the same time. But it's a plug and play kind of thing. It's attached to the mast and plug them in and go from there. It's not anything complicated.
Just for everyone's clarification, the remote monitoring equipment is around $1,200 for each unit, and that was a bulk rate price that DCR got. They are covering the costs of the remote monitoring equipment. We were asked that if we wanted the add-on for the rain gauge, that we needed to cover that cost separately. So the state's paying for the remote monitoring equipment, the main portion of it, which is $1,200 for each unit. And then the additional 400 is what, for each unit is what we're paying for.
Thank you, Ann.
Steve, do
Okay.
you have any idea, David Collins, do you have any idea what sort of drainage areas these lakes carry? I'm just,
Yeah,
I mean,
they're thousands of, they're hundreds and thousands of acres. They're big. These
Yeah,
are
yeah,
big,
okay.
big dams. They're still holding back the
Yeah.
water that we got last weekend.
right, okay.
I have one question maybe for Ann. In the way that the money gets doled out for the dams, there's like maintenance funds and then there's, various like slots. Where would this be coming from? Can that come from our maintenance or does this have to come from some other funds in the district? Either related to dams or just something we have in reserve?
That's a good question, Tom. Amy and I will check with DCR to determine whether or not those funds could be pulled from the maintenance funds. If that's the case, we certainly have, I think, enough funding in that category to cover the costs. That would be my first choice, but it depends on DCR's answer. So,
Okay.
follow up with them.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other discussion, there's a motion and second to approve the purchase of the rain gauges to go with the remote monitoring systems on the dams. Amy, would you call the roll call vote?
Mr. Campbell, Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. That's the extent of your dam committee report, Steve? Is it?
Yes, sir. That's all we had to do.
Okay, thank you.
Question. Just because of the unique characteristics of this equipment and being out where it is, it seems to me it's subject to perhaps tampering and theft. Are we covered for that sort of thing?
Possibly an Amy question with their liability or coverage. It also could be a question for DCR, since they're purchasing the remote monitoring equipment itself. Lisa has also been working on some signage. I don't know that that's going to deter anyone. Hopefully they won't be damaging it on your property, Grosvenor. I'm just curious, do you feel like that's going to be a concern at your place, or you're thinking about some of the other locations?
I'm thinking about the other locations. I'm actually pretty confident that my area will be pretty safe.
Okay.
It just seems it's small, it's attractive, it's out there where people aren't. And, I have had things like game cameras taken away. And I just wondered, and I didn't think about it until Steve was talking about how easy it is to put the rain gauge in. And I'm thinking, well, if it's easy to put in, it's probably easy to take out.
They're going to be mounted high on some poles. So it's of course, anybody can steal anything, but by and large, the one for there are a couple of, there's one that was going to be kind of seen from the road. The one that probably would have the most concern would be 6B, because you can see it from Spring Creek, but they'll be fairly well secured to these poles, and well, if somebody pulls one down, it's going to stop transmitting, and I assume that'll send an alert to whoever has that app on their phone saying that something's going on. So at least give us some notice that things are going on.
Is Luke with us still?
I'm here, Tom.
Luke, I'm sure you remember we discussed in the past, what I think Shenandoah Valley District had some issues with vandalism on something like this.
Yeah, I
Is that
mean,
correct?
they've had a little bit. It hasn't been to a point that the whole structure device has been damaged beyond repair, but they're in a whole different situation than we are. All of their dams are on national forest, so it's public access, pretty much unlimited. If you can get there with a four-wheel drive, you can use the dam and use those facilities. All of our dams are pretty private, and you got to go through gates and farmland to get to them. So I don't see our situation. We're lucky in that sense that no one can really go there without permission or really just blatantly trespassing, is my understanding. In the valley, it's like I said, it's all national forest, so they can come and go as they please, and that kind of opens the door for more of that. Like I said, luckily, I don't think that will be an issue, but you really never know.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I just thought it was worth discussion, that's all.
Yeah, I got a question about, there must be some kind of sending unit that sends the information. I mean, somebody mentioned telephones, so there's probably even location service on that line so that they may be able to track it if it ever comes to that. But I agree with Steve, anybody can take anything from anywhere, so in the end. That was all I had, just thinking out loud.
Okay. Actually, we have, you will see on the little red box, Dam Committee report, the actual minutes will be under consent agenda. So we've taken care of those pieces of businesses for the Dam Committee. We're going to move on to the Climate Committee report. Navar, are you there?
Yep, sorry, just had to unmute myself.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we met earlier this month. I don't remember the exact day. It's probably on the minutes. Let me thumb down real quick. Okay, that was the 4th, I guess. Okay, so we had several people there. Also, Sandra from Natural Bridge, who's been working on some of this with us. Mostly we worked on kind of lining up our ducks. We put together a one-pager for healthy soils, kind of just some background information to go along with that little piece of legislation we've been talking about off and on since the summer. And we took that and after we went through that and also talked about some of our different contacts we had who we'd be able to talk with at partner agencies as well as in the General Assembly. So we've been kind of just getting in touch with people, trying to see how likely it is that we'll get anything through this session, or at least start the conversation with the General Assembly. This upcoming session is going to be pretty tight. I think all the legislators are limited to, if I remember correctly, 15 pieces of legislation. So we may not be able to get anything through this year, but hopefully we can at least get that conversation started. And then at the Area 2 meeting, Area 2 has recommended that the state put that healthy soils item back on the state legislative agenda, and that'll come up during the statewide meeting in December, that recommendation, and we'll see what other people think about that. It's, to be completely honest, probably a little bit of a stretch that we're going to get it back on the agenda, but at least we'll get some people talking about it and know that we're working on it. I think, sorry, go ahead.
If I could just add, I think the goal of getting people talking about it probably has been accomplished. There are other districts around the state that have expressed interest as well, so TJ is not alone in this. Since the Area 2 meeting on, I think it was November 10th, I've had a couple of conversations to find out a little bit more of the rationale for why the association is hesitant to want to move this forward. And also spoke with the folks that are working on the Virginia Healthy Souls Coalition. And I don't disagree at all with their perspective. And so I think what they're hoping is that now that the Virginia Healthy Souls Coalition has had a chance to hire somebody, they've been sort of a slow moving group because they didn't have funding, but they now have funding from NIFWIF. They're hopeful that organizations like the association, the districts themselves, as well as a number of other partners like Extension and NRCS, can work together over the next year to collectively come up with a game plan for whether it's policy, legislation, funding, programs. And so part of the reason I asked Robert or Navarre, you reached out to Carrie and we got Robert to come and speak today is we keep hearing that there's some things happening, but we really haven't been aware of what they were. Robert is going to talk about some work that DCR is actually doing. So it's funny, in some of those meetings, I get the sense that things aren't happening and they don't want things to move forward. But at the same time, I think there's a lot happening behind the scenes. There just hasn't been a real coordinated effort yet to move it forward in a way that everybody's aware of it. So I really appreciate and respect the reasons that they're hoping that TJ would maybe not push for the legislation this year and not, to hold back so that we can have a collective voice going forward to legislation in a year. The other reason, of course, is I think there's a pretty big consensus that this year's legislative process is going to be so limited and so different than it has in the past that this is just one of those items where they were hoping that we could hold off and work together as a group with this coalition over the next year. So I just want to give you what their perspectives are. I don't disagree that it's not a bad plan, but I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that. I think that there are a lot of other things that we can be doing if we did choose to slow down on the legislative piece. For instance, working on this Healthy Soils bundle, trying to work with DCR and Robert to figure out, how can we help and what part of the implementation pieces of it can we focus on? How do we get COMET? How do we get our staff trained on COMET? There's so many things that we could be doing that we don't have to wait for legislation on. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I did speak to Emily Francis, who's kind of the temporary, I think, Healthy Souls Coalition coordinator until they officially bring on a full-time person in January. And I believe that position's funded for 3 years. So I think there's going to be a lot of movement in the next year and certainly in the next 3 years. And as you all know, it's happening nationwide. So we're not unique in that regard. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. I get nervous sometimes if we're trying to, how hard we're pushing back against the association. I wanted to know a little bit more about, really what was going on. So at least that's what I've heard. And I just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks for that, Ann. I can see why they're suggesting what they're suggesting. I think, and one thing that kind of came out of the Area 2 meeting, and I think even from the state association, for anyone who hasn't been following along, is that I don't think anyone's against doing anything for healthy soils. I think some people just are debating whether it's the time is now or whether we should wait a little bit. And so it's in the policy book either way. So I think we have kind of a win-win situation here. But the legislative piece is just what we've been working on. I think, like Ann said, we don't want to focus on just that. And if we can do stuff without legislation, like, it's more important that we're getting stuff on the ground than that we have this legislation go through. So if there are ways that we as a climate committee can help with that and help staff, let us know as far as that goes, because that's probably more important. And then I think the only other thing I had to say about climate committee is that Sandra from Natural Bridge, and I'm going to butcher her name, Tiziana, I think. I'm blanking out right now what district she's from.
I think she's from Prince William.
Okay, and then Frida Cathert. Those three I've been talking with a little bit. So there's been some discussion of trying to implement some sort of climate committee at the state level. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out from them if they've talked to Kendall at all about what hoops are necessary to have a new committee for the state board and all that fun stuff. So I will keep you all apprised as I hear back from them on what's going on with that. And I think that concludes everything unless somebody else can think of something that I totally forgot to mention.
Yeah, just wanted, the Virginia Healthy Soils Coalition did meet on Monday for the first time, I think, in a very, very long time. And apparently they do have several working groups they're trying to put together. I think there's 4 different categories. My understanding is that TJ is listed in at least one, if not more of those. So they already have us on their radar as far as being part of the effort. So I just want to know that they are recognizing that Thomas Jefferson has a strong interest. And then Julie and Lonnie and Navarre, you also know too, the city of Charlottesville has reached out to us to request our assistance on some climate work they're doing. We're trying to see if it's the right fit. And then also, as you all know, the Albemarle County has moved forward with their climate action plan. And we have already been engaged with them on that and are continuing to do that work with them as well. So it's happening locally. And Navarre, as you just said, I think that there are a lot of pieces there are a lot of things we can be working on outside the legislative part. And I think that there's a lot of momentum. So I'm excited about it.
Okay. I'm just wanting, I think I know what we're saying here, but just a little clarification because we have the 3 items on the, on number 6, A, B, and C. Come December 7th at the State Association meeting when they're discussing legislative agenda, this district is not going to storm the barricades over this subject, correct?
So Area 2 is going to suggest that we put the healthy soils piece back on. If people have questions, I will answer. But yeah, I mean, we're not gonna like throw any tables over or anything about it. Like, it's probably going to be in the policy book either way. I think that also has to be voted on, but basically the state association was recommending it go in the policy book instead. Area 2 is going to recommend that it goes back into the legislative agenda instead of the policy book, but either way, it's going to be in there in some form.
Okay.
So yeah, well, I'll just be there to say my piece, but I'm not gonna throw any furniture or anything. So.
Right, and I think what I mean by that is I think the one more approach we haven't mentioned, but we have talked about it before, is I believe things can be brought from the floor on the legislative agenda. Someone could correct me on that, but we are not making any attempts to. Area 2 is saying that the sense of Area 2 is to go ahead and try to put it back onto the legislative agenda, but we are not going to make an attempt, if that doesn't go through, to bring it from the floor. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the Area 2 recommendation might also come from the floor. I'm not sure exactly what the protocol is there, but we'll back Area 2 supporting that, but we won't try to beat a dead horse again.
This is Julie. There is one brief update that the legislative session is going to be 30 days, which is shorter than it has been since the 70s. And therefore the Senate members are limited to 12 bills. And it's looking like House delegates will be limited to 5 to 8. Committees might get to meet twice. I mean, it's just going to be really tight. So, you know, sort of backing up a little bit what Ann said, while this is really important, it might not be the year to take the stand from the floor on this, but continue to get our ducks in the row for next year in case that's needed then.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Julie said, we have talked with Delegate Hudson's office, and there are some potential options since they're limited on number of bills for omnibus type things to go through. So if there's another soils bill that got kind of postponed until the 2020 session. So if that comes back through, we might be able to piggyback on that or something else. So we'll keep talking to people. Even if it's on the policy book, we can still talk about the legislative stuff up through January when the session happens. So we'll keep talking to people, and like Julie said, if it's not this year, then maybe next year. So.
A couple of
Okay.
things I'd like.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Tom.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
A couple things I'd like to throw in. One, first off, thanks to Navarre and the committee for the great work they've been doing on this. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting. And then in addition, I think it's good, and it's something that we shouldn't obviously let disappear, the fact that the state association really needs to be involved in this conversation ongoing. I mean, if this is an organization that this issue is strikes right at the heart of who we are and what we do, and it also really addresses a major potential area again in the future as another cash stream for landowners with carbon credit. And that's one of the other bills I know that they're talking about possibly tweaking is the existing bill that provides the ability for forest management. There was a kind of two pilot projects, I think, in the state for carbon credit trading relevant to forests. And they're saying that there's a way that bill may be reshaped or redirected so that once the market's there, they could address carbon credits for soil sequestration also. So I think it's something that's really significant and important. And I agree this year is probably not the year to try to get the association to press their legislative weight behind getting a bill introduced. That being said, I think that's got to be part of all conversations going forward. Thanks.
Well said.
Okay.
Joe.
So it looks like, Navarre, that nothing, no actual business item action will come out of your report today.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. But let's just memorialize that into the minutes. I know we will be adopting your minutes of your 11-4 meeting pretty soon, but just because we know there won't be anything of those A, B, and C, other than the fact that I'm sure your one pager is being sent on to people all over the state, including legislators. But let's go ahead and accept the report, because you kind of have made it, look like maybe we were going to do some business there and we didn't. So let's just go ahead and move and second to accept the climate committee report, if someone would do that.
I so move.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded to accept the climate committee report. Amy, would you please call roll call vote?
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Mr. Easter?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Lucas?
Aye.
Mr. Meeks?
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch?
Aye.
Mr. Murray?
Aye.
Mr. Pratley?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Navarre. Moving on to, we added item number 7, request for an extension to submit the strategic plan to DCR. Ann, would you please take that one?
Sure. If you all recall, we had a strategic planning work session in February, and I unfortunately was not there for that. I know that staff kept all the minutes and the notes and the sticky pads and all, and we have it. But then shortly after that meeting, we all packed up our boxes and the coronavirus sent us home. So we have not really had a chance to kind of reconvene our thoughts together. Staff had, I think, maybe one meeting right afterwards, just to sort of revisit what we thought. But I mean, since then, we've obviously just had other things going on. The deadline for that would have been in June, I believe, or July. That was the termination of our 4-year plan that we have in place. But then DCR allowed for that deadline to be waived because of the coronavirus. So we just heard from them, and I think Debbie can correct me, it's been in the last month or two where they've asked that it be turned in by December. But just with everything that we've got going on in the fall, 5 locality reports we've got due, all of the holidays, et cetera, and other things. I have not had a chance to reconvene us, and I'm not really sure yet how we're going to do that. So I've heard from Debbie that we can request an extension until June of next spring, which would give me 6 months to figure out what our strategy will be and how we're going to do that, whether we need to have a committee, a subcommittee, or do you all want me to just email you out a draft? Do you all want to participate? So I've got a lot of questions in mind about how you want that process to go. But for right now, for today's discussion, I just need to know if you're willing to take an action to request an extension until June 30th of 2021, because DCR has asked that if we want an extension, we have to formally take an action on that before December.
And you don't have to request it. You can actually just make the decision to extend.
Oh,
so
okay.
You can extend, yeah. So long as it's recorded in the board meeting minutes that the board is going to extend until June 30th of 2021. That's what's required.
Okay. And certainly I would put this on our agenda in probably January to discuss what a process would look like for those 6 months, January through June, and how involved, everyone wants to be and at what level. But for today, it's just the extension.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Would someone move that the board approves a strategic plan extension till June 30th of 2021?
Motion by Mark.
I'll second. David
Okay.
Collins.
Thank you. Moved and seconded to board to approve a strategic plan extension till June 30th of 21. Amy, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. You can see it on your agenda there. The items are, I don't think we have anything, all those other things on the list below, I think, are part of the ratification agenda. So it would just be the items you see there next to number 1. And if we're ready to go, entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second, David Collins.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. If there's no discussion, Amy, would you call a roll call vote?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Oh, sorry. Aye. I was on mute.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it, approved. Moving on to the ratification agenda. If everyone's had an opportunity to see that, there's actions from under 2 committees carried out by the committee chairs. And now we're asking for ratification of those delegated authority actions by the board. So if someone would move.
I'll make a motion to approve the ratification agenda.
Second, David Collins.
Thank you. Moved and seconded to approve the ratification agenda. Amy, would you call the roll call vote on that, please?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Easter,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Meeks,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. Next, we'll be moving on to reports of cooperating agencies and partner reports. And Debbie, DCR, you can go first, please. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. Just a few things to share with you this morning. The General Assembly has recessed. The budget has gone to the governor. He has until December the 9th to sign it. All indications are we expect him to sign it because the things he wanted are included. But how that affects districts is that the $3.84 million for the Water Quality Improvement Fund, which we're using for our agriculture program, was reallocated, as well as the $15 million for dam rehabilitation projects. So that's good news. And assuming that he signs it on the 9th, the Soil and Water Board at their December 16th meeting will probably take up both of those items, or at least discuss it a little bit. Let's see, we have the Area 2 meeting, and we do have some new officers in Area 2 that will take over on December the 7th. John Flannery, who's a director at Loudon Soil and Water Conservation District, stepped up and agreed to the Area 2 chair, and Will Lintner, a newer director at Prince William Soil and Water Conservation District, agreed to step in as vice chair. So we were able to get those positions filled. Thank you, Tom, for your help with that nominating committee. FOIA, let's talk a little bit about FOIA. I know some of you have probably taken some training. Maybe some of you participated in the training that DACO offered on November the 16th. There is one new option that is really a great option. And if you have my report in front of you, or you can see it on the screen there, number 4, the FOIA Council has actually recorded the FOIA training as an MP4 file. So if you click on that link that's highlighted on the very last line, you can actually go in and listen to the recording. Now, it doesn't print a certificate, but the FOIA Council is saying it's not required to have a certificate. But you can go in there, listen to the training, and then once you're finished, obviously write down the date that you did it, and then call the clerk of the County Board of Supervisors or the City Council, for those of you that are in the city, and let them know your name, that you're a director at the Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water Conservation District, and the date that you listened to the training. You can do that by email, you can do it by telephone call. Also let Amy know so that the district can keep a recording too. The online training that's listed in number 3 is still glitchy. I tried it again last week, still got hung up. So the 2 things that I recommend is either you do the recording, the MP4 recording, or on December the 15th, you tune in to the association's FOIA training that they're going to provide that meets the requirements. So those are kind of your 2 options. It does have to be done by December 31st. So you kind of need to make a decision on what you're going to do to get that finished. But I would not count on the FOIA Council website training, the one that, that keeps messing up. Now, the one thing about the MP4 file, I have heard some people say that about at the 11-minute mark, if you listen to it in Google, at the 11-minute mark, something kind of happens and you have to skip over a little bit to kind of tune back in. And so it might work better on Internet Explorer or Mozilla. I listened to it on Google and I didn't have a problem. So that's just what I'm hearing from folks. So that's just a be aware kind of thing.
Debbie, I've got a
yes.
question on that. On number 1 on your report, is there like a quiz or questions? Because it says one must participate in the webinar for it to count, not just listen.
Yeah, there is no quiz, but there will be. You'll have to register. And then if several directors are together in a room, let's just say like John Marshall plans for the directors to come into the office because they have a small board. They only have a 5-member board and 3 of them are planning to come into the office. One of them has a hearing issue for a variety of reasons. There'll be a chat box or something where they're going to have to be able to put their names in a chat box to be recorded. So no, there's no quiz, but in order, somebody's got to know that you're listening in, if that makes sense. That's my understanding with that one. And you do have to register. So you click on that link and then the association would have you register for that.
Okay, thanks.
But there's no test, no quiz, anything like that. Good question. On the back side of the report is just a list of all the virtual trainings that are coming up. A lot of you are interested in VCAP. They've got a session going on December the 2nd for VCAP that you might be interested in listening into. December 7th is the association's annual membership meeting. So all of the directors, not associate directors can't vote, but directors can vote. And that's when the association, this will take the place of our regular business meeting that would normally be at the annual meeting, where they vote on their budget, their election of officers, the legislative agenda, and then any topics that might come up from the floor. So I hope some of the directors will be able to tune in. Again, you have to register. You have to click on that link. And that annual membership meeting is at 2 o'clock on December 7th. The board of directors will be meeting that same morning. So if you wanted to tune into the board of directors meeting, that's going to be at 9:30 that morning. I understand the login information for that is on the association's website now. The other thing that's of importance to just write on your calendar, and that's the Soil and Water Board's board meeting. They have set that board meeting date for December the 16th at 10 a.m. And the link is down under important dates. And at that point in time, they will be taking care of action items. They will be talking about the perennial stream guidance documentation, because the board is required to adopt perennial stream guidance. They'll also be talking about those funds that I mentioned earlier. They've got several things, but their agenda hasn't been posted yet, but they've got a few things that are going on. The audit subcommittee will meet on December the 16th, an hour before that, the association's audit. And then on December 17th, the Ag B&P Technical Advisory Committee will have their last meeting, and it's a webinar. It's not a meeting because they're not allowed to meet. But they will go over all of the final suggestions for our fiscal year 22 cost share program. So technical staff might want to tune in, and those new directors that are very involved with our cost share program might want to tune in to that webinar to hear all of the changes that are going to be recommended. One of which is changes to the cover crop deadline dates. They're going to be adjusted by about 10 to 14 days. So I think there'll be a lot of interest in that, that change. And that's all I have, unless you have some questions for me.
No, also you want to call attention, Daryl Glover had a report in our packet, division director's report.
Yes, let's see.
Yes, Tom, I added that was from what Daryl provided to the Area 2 meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So Debbie didn't put that in there, I did, but I just thought it had a really good summary of some things and thought it might be helpful for you all to see it, since I know everybody wasn't able to attend the Area 2 meeting.
Certainly work is continuing on the Chesapeake Bay bill update. Requirement there is that, as I mentioned, development of an office method for determining perennial streams by December. So that's the thing that I was talking about. Soil and Water Board will take into account. Establishment of a portable livestock stream exclusion fencing specification. That has been approved by the Technical Advisory Committee and will be before the Soil and Water Board in our next cost share program. So they'll look at that probably at the March meeting. And then there is a stakeholder group that is meeting to continue looking at all of the ramifications for nutrient management plan adoption on cropland, acres of greater than 50, and stream exclusion for folks that have 20 or more cattle, because that is part of the bill that will go forward if we're not able to meet our reductions by 2025. So a lot of work going on with that. And I think that's probably about it. We are developing a small herd initiative. I didn't know anything about this, so I'm still trying to find out some information about this. But it would be concentrated towards operations with at least 20, but no more than 35 head of cattle. So I'm trying to get some more information about that. Can't share much more than what's in the report right now. We do have a new CDC for our Tappahannock office. Marissa Rowland, who has been working part-time with David Bryan in our Ag Incentives program, has accepted the position as a full-time CDC in Tappahannock. So we are back up full staff for the Conservation District coordinators. There's 7 of us around us.
Okay, Debbie, thank you. Thank you for your report. Also, the part about the perennial streams, I think we're still under a comment period. I haven't talked to anybody. I'm hoping staff has looked into that. And then if any directors who are interested and knowledgeable about the subject may, I think Debbie sent out an email about this process for commenting on
yes, the comment period is open until December the 9th. And they're asking, it started on November the 9th, so it just started last Monday. But they are asking folks to please take a thorough review and get your comments in as early as possible, because they've got to turn those comments around to the Soil and Water Board by the 16th. So they've got a pretty tight time frame to get all the comments addressed before it goes before the Soil and Water Board. There was a webinar and conference call a couple weeks ago with a lot of stakeholders to go over it. But anyway, so yes, December the 9th is the last date for those comments to go in. So if you have comments, please feel free to make them and try to get them in early.
So, yeah, I paid close attention to that email, and it is a big issue. I know in Albemarle County, the difference of something being a perennial or intermittent stream means the difference of a 100-foot buffer or no buffer at all, and the ability to remove this, to erase the stream completely off the landscape. And I've seen several issues like in Stonefield, if you guys are familiar with that development, where the decision to classify the streams on that property as intermittent meant that they were completely erased. So it is a big issue. A lot of times the classification of perennial or intermittent comes down to just a lack of data. In Albemarle County, there's a huge section of the county. If you just looked at the map, you could tell that there was tons of streams missing that weren't even in their GIS layer. And so I pushed the county on trying to update their GIS layer to document those streams. I imagine, a lot of counties have very few staff that can go out and verify streams on site to determine whether they're perennial or intermittent. So they're probably doing some kind of GIS analysis or looking at USGS maps or whatnot to try and determine what kind of streams these are. So this,
Lonnie, you're right. There's been a lot of data analysis done. They're using quite a few different layers from a variety of sources. This particular exercise will be for the legislation that has been passed, but will become effective if we're not able to meet the bagels for requiring folks to implement stream exclusion BMP if they have more than 20 cattle on perennial streams. So it'll be very specific for that program.
Okay, I'm going to step in here. And I also believe they did mention that, I think they had in parentheses office method. So it would, it's going to be something that's done, like you said, through GIS, more than likely. Since we have 10 minutes to go till our speaker, we look like, from I can see the agenda here, I think we can make it. So Debbie, if that concludes your report, I don't believe.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. I don't believe there's anybody for here. I was looking at participants list. I don't think there's anyone from NRCS today. Carrie couldn't be here this morning to represents Extension. DEQ, go ahead.
Tom, real quick. FSA did send in an email with a long list of things, but it didn't make it into the packet in time. So I've just emailed it out to the board and to staff so everyone can just take a look at the email, and that's the FSA report.
Okay, thank you. DEQ, we usually get a narrative report from them sent in. That should be in your, that's the red box indicates that's in your packet. TJ Foundation, Joe, do you have anything to report today?
Yeah, a couple things, Tom. We had one inquiry. I don't know if this was, I think it was after our last board meeting, from a Kristen Jones. She had a friend who has 20 acres on the Mormon River, was interested in an easement, and I gave her the information to give to her friends. I haven't heard anything back from them as far as interested in going forward. We also had a concern voiced by, you have to help me here, Ann, one of our easement holders out in Crozet, worried about a proposed subdivision that was going to be put in that was, he thought, impinging on some wetlands, I assume adjoining his property. I never saw the maps. He was asking what we could do to help fight that, as he thought it would have an impact on the conservation values on his easement. I conveyed to Ann's, when it's been communicating with him, that he should put together his own case as to what specific easement values would be impacted and how they'd be impacted by this, and go to the county and deal with that, and also suggested maybe Lonnie could help out with that because it was Albemarle Mountain County obviously making that decision, and it was the county's decision, not ours.
So Joe, I did inquire to Ann Malik, who represents that district, to see what she knew about that, just fact finding to find out what she knew about that that project. We know what the waiver process would be. I mean, there is a water protection ordinance in Albemarle County that dictates a 100-foot buffer on perennial streams. So, you know, I just went right now. I'd like to get some facts myself on what, you know, what the process is, so at least we can share the facts of that process with the concerned landowner. And I think as I know more about the waiver process, I'll see if there may be some potential for us to weigh in, you know, if there are factual things we can contribute to that determination as to whether the waiver should be granted or not.
Great, I really appreciate your help on that, Lonnie. And yeah, obviously it's something that until we've got just that, some additional factual information to work from, all we can really provide at this point is generic information to the landowner. But as you get that, I really appreciate you sharing it, so we can figure out what the foundation or the district should do, if anything. Those are the only two items I had, Tom. Unless, Ann, do you have any other comments? Not hearing any, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, anything from the State Association or National Association of Conservation Districts?
Well, Debbie sort of covered the stuff for the State Association. I'd just like to reiterate that the annual meeting is December 7th, so please participate in that. NACD yesterday released information about the annual meeting for next year. It was decided at the end of October to make it a virtual meeting instead of a face-to-face meeting or some other hybrid. So that was a little disappointing because it was going to be a trip to New Orleans. So anyway, instead they're going to have a virtual meeting February 1st through the 10th, 10-day long virtual session. And I think the board meetings will be held toward the end of it. Anyway, it's all online on the NACD website. This would be a great year to participate in some of what NACD has to offer. I think the first 5 days is going to be the more educational aspects of the gathering. But I would encourage everybody to go to the website and look at it. If you want to participate, the cost is only $50. So that we're kind of shocked us all that they were only going to charge $50 to do what they need to do. So it'd be a good opportunity to take advantage of some of that annual meeting. And it's the 75th anniversary of NACD. So please check it out. That's all, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. We got 3 minutes to go till our speaker would be coming on. So, Ann, anything under staff reports?
I think since we've got 3 minutes left, I will pass. And if anybody has any questions for me, just let me know. I'll send out any emails if there's anything urgent.
Okay, thank you. And there's the site visit log. Anybody wants to, it's one red box there. It's in your packet. You can see what staff has been up to out in the field. Any directors have anything to bring up in about 3 minutes time? Not hearing any. Is Robert Shoemaker in with us now? Is he on the call now or the meeting?
He's not, doesn't look like he's joined quite yet. He's been emailing me, so he's aware that.
He's logging in now.
Okay. Yeah, he's been emailing with me over the last half an hour, so he should be joining soon. And just so everyone else, you might notice that the other staff members from TJ are starting to join. I see Mary, Marie, Audrey's probably going to be jumping on here soon if she's not already on. I did ask staff those that were available to also listen. I think Robert will have some interesting things to talk about, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
Okay. It looks like he is on.
Great.
And I know we said 11:30 and I know some staff members would be coming in. So Robert, would you, the couple minutes we have up to 11, do you want to just kind of introduce yourself and, maybe get underway in a couple minutes?
Yeah, welcome, Robert.
Yeah, thank you, Ann and Tom. I see a couple of familiar names on the list. So listen, I'm glad to be here, but I've actually been, working with Debbie Cross with DCR for many, many years, but nutrient management out of the Warrenton office, and have recently been involved with some of the soil health work going on within DCR and try to integrate what we're doing with water quality with soil health. So that's just a brief introduction.
Okay, it's 11:30. So if you want to roll with what you were going to share with us this morning, just
sure.
Go right on ahead, please.
So I appreciate being here. So what I was asked to talk a little bit about what happened back last year was Virginia Tech submitted a soil health coalition grant to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. That was actually accepted. And it was supposed to start March 1. Well, as everybody knows, with the federal government and everything right now with COVID, everything got delayed. So funding for that just got fired up just a couple of weeks ago. But this was to look at building a soil health coalition in Virginia. In that regard, in a nutshell, I just sent to Ann a contact for that coalition, which was Emily Francis. And so I think right now, there are probably at least 25 members of that coalition. But the grant itself is a 3-year grant to advance soil health in Virginia. And as many of you well know, I believe it was in the WIP 3, it looked at expanding not only soil health. Water quality was always an issue, but they looked at expanding soil health and looking at carbon sequestration. So in a nutshell, that coalition would help to build relationships, looking at promoting soil health and looking at marketing soil health and also implementation and look at some research. Again, that grant is, the main grantee is Virginia Tech on that, but several partners involved. So how I'm actually involved is, as many of you know, DCR has had the water quality cost share program for many years. I think it's fair to say that water quality was the main driver of DCR's programs. I don't want to say it was the only driver, but certainly it was the main driver. And so my role in the coalition is to work with some of the partners, mainly some of the technical partners, and see if we can integrate soil health into DCR's current cost share programs. And it sounds simple. There is a definition in the grant for what soil health is, keep the soil covered, so forth and so on. But as you all probably know, soil health sometimes can be somewhat of an ambiguous term. It can mean different things to different people. So we are currently in the process of making recommendations back to DCR as to how we would actually incorporate soil health into the cost share programs. Initially, it may be through a pilot project similar to what Three Rivers did. Hopefully, maybe it would get into the full cost share setup. So I really can't say how that would happen, but we are in the initial stages of making recommendations. One is, just to give you a few items where I think it will go, we actually have a meeting later today to help iron out a few things, but really what is soil health? There's a definition in the grant itself of what soil health is to the coalition, but somewhere along the lines, if DCR adopts it into cost share programs, you have to look at what your agenda is, what you want to achieve. And that's important because I can't imagine that if somewhere down the road, if we got money for soil health, you want to measure results. So knowing what you're after is important because you need to figure out what measuring stick you would use to measure results. That's something else to look at on that. And beyond that, it's how do we measure? And we're also looking at this deal of carbon sequestration, or perhaps more specifically soil carbon. So it's on the very front end, without looking too closely, we can obviously see three co-benefits: water quality, soil health, and possibly carbon sequestration. So those are the three benefits that we're looking at. The other thing we're looking at, and I'll open it up for questions after this, we're looking at what is, I guess the best way to describe it is a soil health bundle. And obviously, where would the cost share practices come from? Certainly, we have a wide array of practices already that are recognized in the Bay model that we get water quality credits for. A lot of those, but possibly not all of those, have a soil health benefit, possibly a carbon sequestration benefit. So really, we have a lot of practices out there already that may very well be the low-hanging fruit. So while we may create new practices after doing some research, we certainly have a wide list to choose from already. So part of some of the recommendations would be, where would these practices come from and how would they evolve over time? The other component of that is almost all the time we had to have a water quality benefit to do cost share. That's not the total case, but in a lot of cases. This soil health bundle, one of the recommendations might be that if we did a soil health bundle, we might have, say, 4 or 5 practices in the bundle. Perhaps not all of those would have to have a water quality benefit recognized in the Bay model. The Bay model is a good tool to use for water quality, but the reality of it is, if you want to make changes or recommendation to that, takes multiple years to get something changed on that. So we may be able to expedite some of these soil health practices much quicker if we look at a soil health bundle that doesn't have to have every single practice have a water quality benefit. Overall, the bundle would, but perhaps not every single component of it would. So that's just a few things on what we're working on. We're also doing on-farm field trials and looking at different measures that we can use. Some are demonstrating what we already know. Some are looking at new technologies. So just in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're working on.
So this is Lonnie Murray. One question, comment I have. It seems like one gap in both the Bay model and in the way that we value practices is it feels that I've long felt that warm season grasses are undervalued in our practices, and also in terms of the Bay model and use as a vegetative buffer. There was a nice, there's a paper presented at the Eastern Native Grass Symposium, October 2012, by Christopher Miller. Actually, ironically, is presented in Charlottesville, and it demonstrated that warm season grasses were far superior in terms of sequestering carbon in the soil than cool season grasses. So, as a suggestion and a question, what work is being done on that, and maybe boosting the value of some of these practices that use warm season grasses?
Well, let me comment on that in general. One of the things is, as far as either from soil carbon or carbon sequestration, soil health, or water quality, one of the things we would be looking at is, number one, what measurement tool would we be using? Now, with water quality, it would pretty much set on using the Bay model. But one of the things we're looking at is, when these suggestions come up, who would be doing the peer review, who would decide what credits are given, so forth and so on. So that very likely would, at a minimum, include the land-grant universities. One of the things that Daryl Glover's told me, and over again, is DCR is an implementation agency, not a research agency. So we take a lot of our suggestions from the land grant. And so I don't know if that answered your question or not. If it's the particular practice, if you're talking about, if it's already in there, it's certainly recognized. But if it isn't, then any suggested practices obviously have to go through a protocol, and that's one of the suggestions I think will be in this paper we'll be presenting.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, the research was, and I'll be glad to share the article out later, but this was actually USDA initiated study. But there's been other research that's shown that too, and I think I guess it's less about and maybe some of our staff could speak to this a bit better, is if Luke is there. In times that we've brought up in some of the meetings about whether it be TMDLs or whether it be the WIP process, we brought up the value of warm season grasses. I think they haven't been recognized as well as they could be. And I think a lot of these values too about carbon sequestration, it comes down to root depth as well. And I think there's a gap in research that needs to be done that demonstrate the water quality benefits. But now that we know the carbon benefits, I think that maybe that can add some work too, to start looking too at the water quality benefits of these.
Yeah, and two comments on that. One is, I know that, and Ann is more familiar with this than I am on the carbon sequestration. I don't know if we're going to suggest using the COMET model. We probably will, but that COMET model seems to be used by a lot of people. That's on the carbon sequestration side. Now, as far as the water quality credits and going by the Bay model, I can just give you a brief example on that. Talking to Roy McGuire, and this had to deal with manure injection and getting credit in the Bay model for manure injection, which you think would be pretty easy. That took several years, and I think Roy included about 600 peer-reviewed articles.
Wow.
In that suggestion to make it stick with the Bay model. So that's not hurting the Bay model, but hopefully it illustrates the complexity of trying to get something through. And so what we're trying to do is, obviously, if there are some really good practices out there, that's one path to go. But what we're also hoping is that by doing this bundle, we can kind of, we're still concentrating on water quality, but it may be less complex to get a credit either with soil health or carbon sequestration. But I think all of those obviously would need to go through a process. I'm not a researcher per se, but I think, yeah, that's one of the things we'd be looking at.
So since you'll be working with Virginia Tech, will there be people in that mix that may be able to get research ideas or proposals of things where Virginia Tech could work on some of these projects? Because they're, I think one of the big challenges is there are log gaps in research. A lot of areas where it'd be nice to have those 300 studies, but we're lucky to even have one.
Yeah. So really, what I would suggest on that is, I think the take-home message is we do have some current practices that we could use. So we could probably get this program up and running sooner rather than later. That's take-home point number one. Number two is we will be looking at new research, new tools. I feel fairly certain in that. And another one is measuring, maybe looking at soil biological activity and tying that into nitrogen mineralization, and then fine-tuning N rates on various crops. But all of those new technologies would very likely go through the land-grant universities, and they would be the ones to contact in regards to interest, because at the end of the day, this is a coalition, and a lot of these suggestions would come from the ground up.
Lonnie, what I would suggest you could also do is send that information to Carrie, since she may have some of those contacts, and certainly you could CC, Robert and I, and we'll see if there isn't someone down there, or Robert, if you know someone through the coalition that's sort of gonna be the keeper of suggestions and ideas, and we could send it to someone else as well. But I think those ideas will be great, as you pointed out, because it's a coalition, and then coalition will kind of maybe help triage like which groups are going to be working on which topics, because my understanding is there's quite a few folks involved, and I think it's going to be really exciting. Certainly the COMET tool doesn't dictate what species composition you use, Lonnie. So, just depending on how this plays out, I don't know that this specific species composition, I don't know that it's going to necessarily be at that fine grain of detail. So there's probably an open door in some ways for some of that type of work you're talking about. But I think just if you could send on that information so we have it, that'd be great.
Yeah, and so part of the conversation today is this thing is evolving even as we speak. So we just got the money, and I sent Ann's contact of Emily Francis, who is kind of the overseer of the entire coalition from an administrative point of view. They just hired the coalition coordinator. I can't remember the lady's name, but they just hired the coordinator. We had a meeting the other day, and it looked tentatively like there would be 4 subgroups. One would be in marketing, one in research, the other is in, I forget the policies, one of them. I can't remember the 4th one. But there actually looks like there would be 4 subcommittees. In the research side, I'm pretty sure that would be Roy McGuire down at Virginia Tech. But if you wanted to get involved in any of those particular areas, it looks like they're going to be broken down into probably 4 subcommittees or 4 subgroups. And I'll send all that to you. And Emily Francis is a great contact as well.
Hey, Robert, this is Tom Prattley from district. Her name is Mary Sketch.
Yeah, I didn't have it, couldn't remember on the top of my head. But
Yeah, I spoke with her earlier in the year about a different subject when she worked for a different organization, and I saw her name come up, and her name kind of clicked, and I realized that, yeah, she's coming to Virginia now to be the Soil Health Coalition coordinator.
Right. And the other thing of interest is, I know is dear to you all's hearts, is, and my computer may start acting up here. I've had some issues that may be starting to do it again. But Kendall Tyree was on the policy subcommittee group the other day, and I know that, you know, Thomas Jefferson's looking at some things with soil health, and so if you'd want to know, and there's certainly no secret, but Kendall Tyree, I thought it was very appropriate that you on the policy subgroup the other day. So just something for you all to think about in that regard, whether you want to get involved here through the Association of Water Districts, whichever. I'm certainly not one to suggest wait out. At least you know the lay of the land, so to speak.
Well, thank you, Robert. So I think that TJ is definitely going to be very interested in working with those groups. And I know that once Mary gets a chance to get started in January, and, you know, she's probably going to need a little bit of breathing room. But I hope that, you know, she'll have some ideas, and hopefully they'll reach out to us, or I'll reach out to them just to find out which of the groups we might fit on. My understanding is that TJ has already been listed in some capacity in one of those 4 groups, if not more. So I'll find out a little bit about that. And we know we're going to be working, hopefully, Robert, with you on this subject in the future. And I don't want to stop anyone else if they have other questions. We do have about 10 more minutes before our normal ending time, Tom. But if other folks have any questions for Robert, I just take this opportunity to ask him. Staff, do you all have any questions? Don't be shy. It's rare that we have 10 minutes before noon. Well, Robert, we definitely appreciate it. I have been in touch with Emily. She did send out, I know that kind of update yesterday email, and I forwarded it to the board. So I think that they're aware. And I didn't say this earlier, but Kendall has been, the association has been a member of the coalition for, I think she told me, at least 4 or 5 years that you guys kind of formally started. And that we're very excited with this NIFWIF grant that you guys are going to have some funding to have a staff person dedicate full-time work on it. And I think we're going to see a lot more movement in the next year.
Well, two comments, if I may, just brief.
Sure.
I told Andy the other day that I've learned that the shortest distance between 2 points isn't a straight line. So I don't know how we're going to get there, but I'm sure we will get there. But this soil health thing, I don't think is going away. And the other thing, which would seem obvious, is, oh, you just incorporate soil health into the water quality cost share programs. when you really sit down and look at it, there are a bunch more moving parts than you would think it might be. So I think this will be a work in progress. I don't think we're going to get there overnight, but you start and give it your best shot and go from there.
This is Navar Bartz. I just wanted to thank you for coming in and talking to us. I'm sure you got plenty of other things on your plate, but it's good to know what y'all are doing. I'm very interested to see what happens with Healthy Soils going forward.
Yeah, and my role in all of this, quite honestly, is not to come up with the recommendations, but to be a facilitator between the soil health partners and DCR. So part of my job is to listen. Matter of fact, a lot of my job is to listen. So that'll kind of give you a little bit better perspective.
Hi, this is Carolyn. Thank you so much, Robert. This has been really informative and has put a couple of, kind of tied together some, miscellaneous loose ends kind of into a more cohesive package for me, at least. I'm just generally curious. Does anybody on the call know if other states have made further gains in integrating the current practices with new emerging ones towards the co-benefits goal?
I think this is Navar. My understanding, I don't remember any specific program off the top of my head, but my understanding is that at least as far as neighbors go, I think Maryland's been doing quite a lot of work on this. Joe might remember more off the top of his head, or Robert. And I know Ann's been working with North Carolina on a pilot down there too.
Yeah, because I'd heard some, I've been seeing pieces of information come up, in recent times, but I just didn't know if, anyone was aware of anything more concrete in terms of the progress that our neighbors or anyone else has made. So.
Yeah, this is Joe. Maryland has passed legislation to have a healthy soils program that kind of basically recognizes that they already have state agencies that are implementing practices that can incorporate carbon credits, carbon sequestration as one of the other benefits, in addition to water quality benefits and improved crop production benefits from healthy soils. So yeah, our neighbor to the north and Little East is active in this field and has recognized it.
Yes, and Carolyn, you probably know, I've probably mentioned, I worked in California before coming here. And before I left, we were just getting to that next step. We had already done, I think, 19 carbon farm plans for the ranch that I did. Just one carbon farm plan was an 8,000 acre ranch in Santa Barbara, but there were 17, 18, 19 others. And that was now 4 years ago. And they were really ramping up when I left. And then since then, California created a Healthy Soils Initiative. But in California, conservation is not funded to the same degree that Virginia is. So for districts to get that kind of funding was unique out west. Here in Virginia, we're really lucky that the Department of Conservation already has this cost share program. So the funding for implementation of all the water quality BMPs that Robert mentioned is leaps and bounds even further along than California. And I don't, everyone tends to think California does some of this stuff, it's progressive first, but really Virginia has been doing, with all the cost share implementation. Robert mentioned some of these practices are, well, they might have a water quality hat, they also have a soil health hat. And James Martin with DEQ is doing the crosswalk on how those interplay with the carbon sequestration piece. And so in some ways, Virginia's really, really further ahead. It just hasn't been wearing a healthy soil hat, if that makes any sense. But there are other places that are doing it, and they're making quite a bit of progress as well.
Thanks. That kind of brings it all together in terms of, where generally progress is being made. So it sounds like we are kind of on the more on the leading edge than I would have thought. So thanks.
I just checked with Regeneration International. It's an older web page, 2017, but it lists about California, Oklahoma, Hawaii, Maryland, and Vermont, Massachusetts as states that in 2017 had already begun doing some things about it. I'll send that link out for folks who are interested. But yeah, we're not behind the 8 ball, but and we're, like Ann says, we're kind of getting out in front of it. So that's a good thing.
Okay, if anybody else have anything else they want to ask Robert or comment on, thank you, Robert, very much for coming this morning. Been very informative, and I'm sure a lot of our people will be working with you in the future.
Well, and again, I appreciate it, Tom. Just 2 brief comments. This really is a work in progress if you haven't figured it out already. And one last comment with this bridge between water quality and soil health. We've had David Bryan, who's the cost share manager at DCR now, engaged in some of these conversations. And I think it's been really helpful. I think David's previous employer was NRCS, and NRCS has really been pushing soil health for years. So it's really nice to have that bridge and also building relationships with folks like Chris Lawrence, so forth and so on. So I think we're heading in the right direction. We'll get there eventually.
Thank you very much for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else have anything to say for the meeting this morning before we move to adjournment?
I just had one comment, Tom. The district did get a comment from someone who had who was getting invasive species coming onto their property from another adjoining property that had a buffer established by the district. And so I guess the question I have is, when we establish exclusion, what do we do in terms of education for landowners about invasive species requirement, or anything we can do to encourage management of invasive species so they don't impact other people?
Luke, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, and I was going to even suggest maybe Lisa. She's been coordinating with Audrey on putting together some increasing our packet materials that we hand out. And it does include quite a bit of information on invasive species, Lonnie. Luke, you may want to jump in first, but as far as like or Mary, even, I see you're still on, as far as like what kind of information we talk to people about when we're there. But I do know that Lisa and Audrey have been putting together some pretty impressive resources, and they are going out in packets when we go out on site visits. So there's just a lot of information out there. The question is whether or not, I think it's to some degree what capacity people have, to manage it, et cetera. Luke, Luke, I see you've got your mic off.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a case by case basis on each farm we go to, and that is part of the planning process, part of our discussions with each individual farmer. And, starting with identification and recognition is obviously the first step. But like Ann said, it really comes down to the individual landowner and the farmer and time and things like that. Unfortunately, we are very limited. We don't really have any funding to address that. And some other sources such as Prism have pretty much dried up. And I mean, all I can say is we stress the education piece, but as far as backing up with some type of implementation, we're very limited in that capacity. But whether it's pasture weeds or things within the buffer, we do try to educate our producers. Where that goes from there, I have nothing to guarantee on that. We leave them with information, we start the discussion, but can't speak to, follow up after the fact and things like that, as that's not.
Well, this is
with our-
Mark. I just want to comment about the buffers. Once the trees start to grow, you can't get a bush hog in there, and they grow up. And I've got a crepe area that's got a bunch of Calari pear in there, and I couldn't keep it out, and I can't get in there now. It's so thick I can't get in there now with a chainsaw to even cut it or spray it. And that's a challenge. I mean, personally, I wish we could do mob flash grazing, because that would keep some of those invasives out, but that's not allowable. But then good intentions work, but after a period of time, like I said, when these trees grow, and then when the blackberries and what take over, then some of these invasives get seeded in there by birds, and then you just can't get any equipment in there to take care of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a statewide issue. We've brought it up at the TAC and pushed for some programs to address that. And then we get into the water quality funding versus invasive species control funding. And I'm sure we could have a long discussion on, how that is all connected. But, that is one of my issues with the buffers we're putting in. It's just focused on infrastructure and not the maintenance within the buffer. That's the one great thing about the James River buffer implementation program, is it's not only tree planting and site prep, it's 3 years of paid for maintenance to, control invasives and get that planting established successfully, and getting those invasives to a point where they're in check and not taking over. But it's, something we hear all the time, and it's, we pushed it with our recommendations to the state, and it's kind of been not to looking for a better word, but shot down in many cases. Not to say, something we can't explore moving forward. I would love that, because we do see these invasives invading the buffer areas we're trying to protect.
I'm just going to jump in as well. Hi, everybody, with a little extra thought here is that, I've been out, and definitely education about invasives is a huge piece of what we do in the field. We provide resources on how to manage them if people have the time and resources available. But I've ended up in several situations where you have something like autumn olive that's actually holding the stream bank together. And it is the only thing keeping that whole bank from sloughing off. So at some point, you're weighing invasive risks to water quality benefit directly. And that's part of the picture as well. So it's not totally cut and dried, I guess, is what I'm trying to say here.
I will.
Luke. Go ahead, Angus.
Hello?
Go ahead, Angus.
I absolutely agree that it's frustrating that we spend huge amounts of money on tree tubes and the paraphernalia that goes with that, but have nothing for the invasives control. And I think as much as I love trees as much as anybody, but I think the money spent on the planting is often kind of redundant to the natural regeneration that would happen anyway, and having no resources to deal with the invasives that are almost certainly going to come in is frustrating, but something that people should be advised about up front when they get into these programs.
Yeah, our goal through the TAC recommendation a year or two ago was to get away from the making the payment and walking away, and having some things built into the contract where they could come in year 2 or 3 within these buffers to keep these invasives under control and make sure it's the desired species we want. And there was a bunch of pushback from DCR on that, and essentially I don't know how to term it better, but a paperwork nightmare in their minds, which I didn't really like as an answer. But I've gotten nowhere. I'm happy to, continue to push for that. It'd be nice if the board could have a separate discussion on that if we do want to take this further.
That sounds like a good idea. And at the least, Luke, I wanted to ask you if we kind of make people understand, like contractual obligations. I mean, if it's just a buffer and nobody in the whole process is guaranteeing what grows in there, if just grass to trees, you're not planting trees, then, could somebody like Mark go in there and just blitz it with a herbicide treatment? And would that be, making certain that they're within what's required under the contract? If you're planting trees and, I don't know, maybe you're required to make certain that those trees aren't outcompeted by something. But if they're just establishing a buffer, and the landowner wants to go in and just kind of blitz it with an herbicide, so long as I think it would be important as you make the person with the buffer, the landowner, understand what contractual obligations might or might not be.
Yeah, and there's nothing that specifies what that buffer needs to consist of. It's a vegetative buffer. Over 80% of the stream exclusion projects we're putting in, we're not planting trees. It's put into the tracking program and into the Bay model as a vegetated grass buffer. Some of those are bush hog once a year. Some of those are just let go and they bush hog is stripped to maintain the fence. But as far as the contract goes, livestock exclusion is required. Maintaining the infrastructure is required. There's no specification on what that buffer has to consist of.
Yeah, it's a problem because also there's been some preliminary research that suggests that a buffer of multiflora rows will result in a benthic impairment because it will starve the creatures in the stream of anything they can eat. Just as we know that to have native insects, to have butterflies and birds, we've long established they need native vegetation. I think as more research comes out, it's going to show the same thing is true of benthic macroinvertebrates. They also need vegetation to survive. And so, yeah, it's a shame that we one of those gaps in research, I guess, in making our case. But I think at some point people have to realize that invasive species management is a water quality goal as well.
Yeah, Lonnie, to that point, Stroud Research Center, I believe they're based out of Pennsylvania or Maryland. They're doing a lot of research into non-native versus native species and how that affects macroinvertebrate communities. And they're finding that the leaf litter that they rely on for food source and habitat is they are not selecting invasives and prefer the native species over the invasive. So it does have wide-ranging effects on future populations of aquatic organisms and just the landscape and the plant communities that we're working in. And there's a long list of invasives that we see, and they're very tough to manage. And the average farmer, the average landowner doesn't have the resources or the time to take something like that on. The percentage we see that are going after it are, wildlife enthusiasts or conservationists at heart, and trying to balance work life and farm life, and then tackle invasives on top of that is a full-time job in itself. So it is a challenge, but I think we're all conscious of it, and we try to do our best to educate, but that can only go so far.
Luke, Joe, what's that?
Real quick, I think that people should go to the Stroud's research website. They're probably the leaders on the East Coast when it comes to research on buffers and its effect on water quality. And that being said, I'd also suggest that this conversation be continued with the Ag Committee.
That's what I was going to suggest, that if you want to take that on someday as a discussion item, when the agenda, can fit that, maybe look into what, at the very least, you can do under our current restrictions, if you will, kind of like what Luke was talking about, what they've tried to do and maybe not been able to, understanding where we stand right now and what we still may be able to do to help with the situation. Does anybody else have anything else to bring before the board? Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to adjourn. Amy, would you call the roll?
Okay, Mr. Meeks has left. I believe everyone else is still with us. Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Easter, Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Mr. Murdoch,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pratley,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.